Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Last time I was here, I have to say it was definitely the smallest crowd I've ever been in here. Really, so what does that mean?
We have an excuse.
Well, okay, maybe. Maybe we'll excuse you. But really the question, it's a bigger question, which is, what happened? Right? What happened? Anybody know what happened?
Are you serious?
A little bit, yeah. You know, I'm not too serious ever, but I'm a little bit serious.
It's a gay freedom day parade after the Supreme Court says gay marriage is okay.
Right.
That's
right.
what we're all celebrating.
Right. And so that's what I'm assuming. I hope that's true. I hope it's all celebration.
It is.
And it is. Okay. Well, you're sure about that. Okay. That's good. Good. Somebody knows. It's quite fascinating what happened. So let's keep asking this question a little. What happened? So what happened at the Supreme Court?
For once, this culture validated us as human beings equal to the rest of the citizens.
Okay, I appreciate that answer very much.
Love wins.
Love wins. Beautiful. Yeah, great. Anything else?
And for those of us that are in the majority that have seen much darker times in the past and we grew up at times when we were absolutely not validated by anybody,
right,
including ourselves, it's a wonderful validation of our humanity.
Yes, beautiful. Everything you three said, great, because I think it's really important to see how dukkha works and what happens when dukkha ends. Anybody not know what dukkha means? Dukkha is the traditional Buddhist word that's generally translated as suffering. And dukkha is, normal part of human life, right? Like if I end up talking for an hour and 20 minutes, you're going to have some dukkha because I'm going too long, right? Or, it's just a normal thing, dukkha, and it also points to more serious, I'm pointing to light kind of dukkha. That would be an easy dukkha. But then there's also more serious dukkha, which is like war or racism or prejudice, of which you all know about, which you were saying, right? The dukkha of being different, or not being included, or not being validated, or not being honored, or not being respected, which we all know in different ways and forms and shapes. And so I think it's really, I don't have a good word for what happened Friday except wow. Or here, I'll say it in a very Eugene way. That's fucking great. Because really, it's like, it's commonsensical, right? This is not even a big deal on a certain level, meaning because it's so commonsensical, right? Like, it's common sense that we're human beings, and human beings love, and they want to get married. What's the fucking question about that, right? Except that we come out of a history of unconsciousness, of prejudice, of fear, of division, a whole, what in Buddhism we would point to as dukkha, and of the self-other misunderstanding of reality that human beings often live in. Oh, there's me and then there's you, and we're different. And of course we're different, but specifically, humans may find very specific differences. I'm short and you're tall, or I'm white and you're black, or I'm straight and you're gay, or I'm man and you're woman. And even those definitions that I'm all saying are even breaking down these days, which is one of the kind of wows of the Dharma and of Dharmic reality, which is that reality is, and again, this is a little bit not quoting the Buddha directly, but Eugene's word, reality is wild. It's not fixed. It's not a thing. We are not things. You are not things. You are human beings, and even that is not a thing, right? And so it's really beautiful when the unconsciousness and the ignorance starts to let go, which is what happened in this country and this culture around gay marriage and really around homosexuality in general over the past 50 years, because we're of similar age. I grew up in Detroit, and Detroit, it was not cool to be gay. And let me be clear, I want to be very I'm actually not gay, just so we're clear, but I grew up in a world and there were gay people. And it was hard for gay people because of the prejudice. And it was it's been quite amazing to watch the change, like, and even in myself, right? Because I have my prejudice, right? Because we all have our prejudices depending on where we sit and who the other happens to be. And so I watched myself, and, you know, I was lucky enough to have some exposure to people who were different very young for a variety of reasons, including the fact I had an older brother who was into the arts, and he married a woman at a young age. She got pregnant, so they got married, who nowadays we would say, oh, she was bisexual. But who knew that word back then, or that term? I didn't know that. You know, but when we met her friends, we got, oh, she's a little different. That's a little different, that woman, because her friends were not the usual common, you know, people that we knew. They were a little different and actually very interesting and cool. But I remember my parents kind of figuring out the deal. I mean, and it was illuminating for them, because my parents had this one great thing. They loved their kids. You know, no matter what the hell the kids did, they loved them. And so, you know, so they accepted her and accepted that whole world into our world. And that meant we learned something about the world and about ourselves, because the whole sense of self got less reified, less concretized, less bound by the history we knew, and open to a bigger world of self and other that was not so divided. And when I think about what happened Friday, and really in my view, it happened for all of us, because we're all here together. And what happened was, it was totally celebratory and totally heartbreaking because of all the dukkha that it took for that to happen, right? And there's a beautiful little poem, maybe haiku, in Buddhism from a fellow named Rick Fields. He said, "Heart broken open." And it's part of the paradox of suffering, which is suffering opens us up. And in the traditional teachings, it's the Four Noble Truths. There's suffering, and there's causes to suffering, and then there's the end of suffering, and they're all connected. They're not, you don't jump over it. No, you go through the shit, and that wakes us up, and it opens our hearts. And so I was, again, coming here thinking about, okay, what the hell am I going to say today? This is like the best day ever, really, in some way. It's fantastic. And so I was thinking about, well, what does it mean in Buddhism? What does it mean as part of practice? And part of what I'm talking about is dukkha, which is really a normal and important area of human life to begin to wake up to. And then, of course, there's change, which happens. Thank God, right? That it happens, and that it can happen for the good and for the benefit and for the well-being for all of us. That can happen is totally great, and that even though the past can be dukkha, we don't have to be fixated in the dukkha that we've all experienced in whatever shapes, forms, whatever circumstances, both individually and collectively. And then the other piece in what I'm describing now are the three characteristics, which is anicca, dukkha, anatta, or what's called not self, which is that there's something about any identity which is beautiful and needs to be respected, appreciated, loved, and is also not to be bound to. That there's more to who and what each of us is than any one identity. That what we are, who we are, is more than we think. And that's part of the teachings of anicca, dukkha, and anatta that begin to lead to freedom. Because as far as I'm concerned, this Friday was a day of freedom. Was like, this was about people being free to do what's true, what's real, what's honest, and what's totally human, right? To love and to gather, meaning to marry, or I don't even care about marriage really, couple in whatever way, shape, or form with total respect, total dignity, and total appreciation. And so part of what I've thought about since Friday was, this is about realization, right? Because this is a big deal that happened. And it's about what realization is also a big deal. And Buddhism is pointing at something that's important to all of us, which we all may have some different words for, different ways to express, but I'll say a couple. One is awakening, or enlightenment, or freedom, or realization, or love, or the sure heart's release, which is one of the phrases that's used to describe awakening in Buddhism. And so Friday was about freedom, and it was about awakening, as far as I can tell, and about the collective community, which I believe all played into what happened on Friday. The collective community coming forward and appreciating the realness of people, right? Because this is about being real, right? This is, again, kind of Eugene language, which is no bullshit. Like who we are, and the acceptance of that, and the validation of that, and the acknowledgement of that, and the appreciation of that, and the love of that, and the impact it has on all of us when people are really who and what they are, instead of faking it or trying to be something else or be some way for somebody. That's just dukkha as far as I can tell. And so there's a line in Zen practice that I like, which is, I'll start with a line from Eugene that I like, who says, practice doesn't work without being real, without being yourself. Like when we all sat here, right, what are we doing? What is meditation? Except we're being real with ourselves. We're not doing anything. We're not fixing anything. We're not, trying to look good for somebody. We're not trying to impress somebody. We're actually sitting with the living consciousness that we call human beingness, the aliveness that's here. And so, and that aliveness is here right now. And so I'm going to encourage you also, you, meaning us, all to pay attention to the aliveness that's here and the awareness that's aware of the aliveness that's here already. Because it's what's here. And of course the aliveness comes in all its forms: thinking, feeling, thoughts, ideas, beliefs, liking what I'm saying, not liking, it doesn't matter, that's all fine. You don't have to change anything. You're already aware of it. And the awareness is alive and knowing. And that is part of what we're tuning into or starting to rest into or relax into who and what we are on a variety of levels, including the ordinary, the everyday, the conventional, and beyond that, beyond the usual, beyond the conventional. And we're not trying to get rid of the conventional, but we don't want to deny the traditionally what would be called the ultimate level of reality, but we don't want to, we're not going to the ultimate to get rid of the conventional. We're learning how to let reality come alive fully right here as it is, which includes both conventional and relative and ultimate. So here's a quote from Thumpton Chodron, who's a woman, a Western woman who's been a Tibetan nun, I think, for about 40 years now. And she said, many people have the misconception that spiritual life, I jumped over a quote, but I'll come back to something. Many people have the misconception that spiritual life or religious life is somewhere up there in the sky, an ethereal or mystical reality. And that our everyday life is too mundane or not so nice. Often people think that it is to be a spiritual person, we must ignore or neglect our everyday life and go into another special realm. To me, being a spiritual person means becoming a real human being. And that's a beautiful understanding, in my sense, of what we're doing, is what does it mean to become real human beings and start to let the fullness of humanity flower and flourish and express itself and live in this world with all its intelligence, all its creativity, all its kindness and heartfulness and love and compassion and wonder and magic and mystery of whatever the hell we really are. Because believe me, I don't know, except I love playing in this realm of human beingness, because it's the only realm that's here right now, in a certain way. So in Zen practice, the quote I jumped over, they talk about, be yourself all the way to the bottom. Like that's how you practice in Zen. Be yourself all the way to the bottom. And that's I love that, because there's so much permission in that. Be yourself all the way to the bottom and see what you discover and see if there is a bottom. It's another part that gets really interesting, because we think we know ourselves, or I'm this or I'm that or I'm something or I'm, and we are. There's all the what we are, and then there's more. And the more is all sitting right here. What the Buddha pointed at is sitting right here when he said, we practice to awaken. And this is possible for any being, any human being, especially because the Buddha thought there was tremendous good fortune in being born in this form because of the potential of human consciousness to wake up or to flower or become, I could use other language, divine, or sacred. And part of what I think was really moving about what happened Friday is that this impacted everybody individually, right? It impacted everybody, right? It impacted me. It impacted all of you. If you're gay or bisexual or even defined by some term I don't know, it's a big deal what happened because it was a collective component to reality that verified the respect for the truth of who people are and who we are and what reality is and what's all part of reality. And so part of what impressed me is the collectivity or the sangha-ness of what is happening in America right now, and maybe really the whole world. And who knows? I don't know, but I wonder sometimes about the amazing impact of how small the world's gotten, right? It's a much smaller world than when I grew up in Detroit. When Detroit, San Francisco was like, where the hell is that? I mean, even the ocean, it was really, I grew up in Detroit. You know, we had some lakes, that was nice, but I was definitely a city kid. When I left Detroit, I moved to New York, and that was a step up, right, from Detroit. But it was, it was not California, it was not San Francisco. It was not Europe. It was not Asia. It was not Africa. It was not, it had its realm, it has its world. And the world's gotten so much smaller now, partly because I believe the internet is a really interesting phenomena in here as part of our reality. And of course, maybe a little less so for this age group, but for young people, man, it's a different, my language, fucking world than it's ever been. I mean, young people, the information's coming so quick, and a lot of understanding is happening. And I mean, the whole relationship to gender, sexuality, race is all being impacted very quickly because we have such a small world now, and there's so much knowing of other worlds than just my world, right? And so one of the pieces that is also that I thought of is this individual communal reality that we share, that we're all individuals and we're all here together. And this is the truth of reality, both. That we have our individualness, we have our uniqueness, we have our difference, and we have our sameness, we have our similarities, we're totally connected. We're not separate at all on some level. So Martin Luther King, he said it this way, he said, all life is interrelated. All life is interrelated. Somehow we're caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied to a single garment of destiny. We're all here right now. And he goes on to say, he says, for some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. I can never be what I ought to be until you can be what you ought to, until you are what you ought to be. You can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. Now that's beautiful Dharma in my understanding. That's what it means to be interrelated, interconnected, not separate. In the most profound sense, we're all here together. And the whole thing that's really, this is again my language, that's really paradoxical, we're all making the whole goddamn thing up, right? Everybody got that? We're making it up. It's been made up since the beginning. And there's beautiful streams of what's been made up, and there's really horrific and tragic streams of what's been made up for human beings. And so this current stream of beauty, in my language, is being felt and appreciated nationwide and worldwide. And some places it isn't even a big deal. That's already a done deal. People are more awake than we've been about sexuality and preference and marriage and where it's already been part of those societies. But especially for our society, which is a very powerful society in the world at this time and place, it's a big impact on the world of what happened. And I loved what Obama said. I've really been appreciating Obama, who's had, it's such an interesting really life he's had, and the fact that he was elected now twice, and that and he's struggled so skillfully with the difficulties of being a president of the United States, the president of the United States. And I loved what he's been saying lately, both about this and something else that I'll talk about a little bit later, which is, he said about what happened on Friday, he said, this is the result of countless acts of courage by millions of people who across decades stood up and slowly made an entire country realize that love is love. Now you're getting my language. That's a fucking great president who can say that. Really, I mean, come on. That's poetry. That's Dharma. We're getting, we're getting some confirmation from reality. This is the result of countless small acts of courage by millions of people across decades who stood up and slowly made an entire country realize that love is love. I could weep. That's just so beautiful. And it's so true. And it's important that we keep waking up together. It's important we keep waking up together. So I'd say one more thing, and this is just for me, I'm saying it, which is I have to mention Allen Ginsberg, who some of you may know of, have heard of. Anybody not know who Allen Ginsberg is? Okay. Well, Allen Ginsberg had a big impact on my life, and I have a lot of love for Allen Ginsberg. And I'll do a short version of this, but he wrote the poem Howl, and I read the poem Howl partly because of my sister-in-law, who was a beatnik and out there and turned me on to a lot of stuff. So I was 12, 11, 12, 13, 14. I started to read Howl and was totally moved by it. And Howell's about a friend of his who was in a mental hospital, Carl Solomon, and it's dedicated to his friend Carl, and it's a beautiful poem. Funny, I even brought the footnote to Howell in case I want to read a little bit of it. But partly it was important to me personally because I was a bad kid. I quit school. By 14, I was institutionalized. I had a choice to go into juvie or mental hospital. And I'm in Detroit, And I'm like, and I was a little kid. I wasn't, I'm not a tall guy, right? So I was a short kid, and basically I was warned, I knew if you go into juvie, you're going to die there, because that is not a good place for me. I wasn't that bad a kid that I could defend myself well. And so I went to the mental hospital, and the mental hospital was actually, oddly enough, public mental hospital in Detroit was great, and I got a lot of help, and it was good for me. And Alan was dedicated that poem to Carl Solomon, who was in a mental hospital, right? And so I always appreciated that. And also when I left Detroit when I was 18, finally graduated high school, even though I quit twice, and then I went to New York, and I lived in the Lower East Side. Well, even before that, I'll go a little. One of the first times I went to New York when I was even younger, there was the first be-in New York. How many people know what the hell a be-in is? A few people. Okay, this is nice to have not a 20-something crowd. And so I went to the be-in, and Alan was there, and he was doing something. He was chanting, is what he was doing, and I got to sit around with him and chant at this be-in, and believe me, most people were just on acid, but I wasn't. And so I had a good time. And then I moved to the Lower East Side, and I lived there, and Alan lived there, so I got to run into him or see him. And so I got to know him a teeny bit, and I always appreciated that. And I appreciated his poetry, for two reasons. One, well, first of all, I appreciated the hell out of Alan, because Alan was just who he was. Like, Alan was no bullshit. He didn't hide anything. He didn't try to change anything. He didn't try to fix anything. Whoever he was, whenever he changed, that's who he was. And he changed. And, if you know Alan's story, he then later became a Buddhist and was very involved in the Dharma for many years. And it was beautiful because his family totally loved him and accepted him. And it was one of the reasons he was so free to be himself. And so here, I'll just read you a little of the footnote of Howell, partly because I love it. He said, the footnote, so you see, he writes this poem, Howell. The first lines is, I saw the best minds of my generation starving, hysterical, naked, I can't remember the rest, driven to something, dukkha. He starts to go into the dukkha of his generation. Right? Then he goes through all this stuff about reality, about what the world was like then, and different places and people he throws in. And then at the end he has a footnote to Howell. And the footnote begins, holy, 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 holy. He goes on and on with holy, holy. He says the world is holy. The soul is holy. The skin is holy. The nose is holy. The tongue and cock and hand and asshole, holy. Everything is holy. Everybody's holy. Everywhere is holy. Every day is in eternity. Every man's an angel. The bum as holy as the seraphim. The madman is holy as you, my soul, are holy. And then he just continues for a while. It's just beautiful. Describing the holiness of his friends, Kerouac and Burroughs and Cassidy, and holy my mother in the insane asylum, because he had a mother in the insane asylum. Holy the cocks of the grandfathers of Kansas. Holy the groaning saxophone. Holy the bop apocalypse. He's describing his era. Holy the jazz bands, marijuana hipsters, peace and junk and dreams. Holy the skyscrapers and the pavements. Holy the cafeterias filled with millions. Holy the mysterious river of tears under the streets. Holy the long juggernaut. Holy the vast lamb of the middle class. Holy the crazy shepherds of rebellion. He just, holy, and then he goes, holy the crazy shepherds of rebellion. Who digs Los Angeles is Los Angeles. Holy New York, holy San Francisco, holy Peoria and Seattle, holy Paris, holy Tangiers, holy Moscow, holy Istanbul. He just goes on and on. It's so beautiful. And then he continues near the end. He says, holy forgiveness, mercy, charity, faith, holy, ours, bodies, suffering, magnanimity, holy the supernatural, extra brilliant, intelligent kindness of the soul. Holy the supernatural, extra brilliant, intelligent kindness of the soul. So there's more. I have more in the talk, but I'd like to leave some more time for us to chat and just see thoughts, reactions, agreement, disagreement, anything you want to say or talk about or enjoy or complain about.
Well, thank you so much. That's really touched me deeply. And I'm so glad that you brought up Obama, because besides Friday, it was quite a week for him.
That's right.
But also on Friday, he delivered one of the most magnificent speeches I've ever heard, and which had the effect on me, who had been suffering ever since that shooting, and in great pain, really.
Yes.
It really affected the healing that I felt in myself. And in his speech, he really did speak about that community, which we all make a part of.
Yes.
And it was powerful.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you said, because really, if I would have had longer time, that's what I would have talked about. Because here would be my question to you. Okay, it's great what happened. Totally great. And I don't want to diminish that anything. But also it brings up a question, what's next? Mm-hmm. And race is so woven into this country's unconsciousness and prejudice that most people, even good liberal people, don't even know how unconscious it is woven into reality. Mm-hmm. And I love what he said, because I also watched what he said both about Friday and then about the shootings in the South. He said it would be a bit, and he just, talked so beautifully about the Reverend Pinckney, who he knew, had met, and before the Reverend Pinckney had died. He said it would be a betrayal of everything Reverend Pinckney stood for, I believe, if we allowed ourselves to slip into a comfortable silence again. And that's beautiful, because that's true. Because the Dharma is not about being silent. It's about being real and waking up together. And if anybody's not free, we're not free. And so thank you for bringing that into the room. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, along I'm having trouble thinking of George Bush singing Amazing Grace. But I'm thinking, to use your word, what a fucking amazing year 2015 is.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems like this is a pivotal year. Stuff like Bruce Jenner becoming Caitlyn Jenner, the gay marriage passing, the Confederate flags are finally being ripped off the flagpoles.
Yes.
Bernie Sanders is touching a nerve where he's drawing huge crowds, where stuff that would be considered extreme and crazy just a couple of years ago. And I don't know whether there's a question here so much. Just I'm just in a state of I'm stunned. I mean, in a very good way.
Yeah.
It's kind of like all these institutions seem to have been just so locked into a certain strong foundation way.
Yeah.
Just being washed away.
Yeah, and that's why anicca and being aware that nothing is solid. right, is an important part of Dharma practice. Nothing is solid. And so starting to get more here, comfortable with the unsolidity of reality, starts to let reality respond to reality, right? We get more in line with the way things are, right? And so I appreciate very much what you're saying, and I just want to encourage to practice with the stunnedness of it, and don't stop there, because there's more to do.
I was touched by what you talked about in terms of dukkha at the beginning, and it's how central it seems to be in its unifying qualities. I mean, I think gay people became human beings in the AIDS crisis.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it started.
That's right. That's great.
Silence equals death.
Yeah.
And now I think about, the cameras are showing us the murders of black men.
Yes.
And we hear on NPR facts like, during slavery there was an average of 4 lynchings per week.
Right.
And now every other day.
That's, just to be clear, that's post-slavery.
Post-slavery.
Yeah. The lynchings didn't happen during slavery. Slavery, they didn't have to lynch. They could kill people. You could kill a slave. It was no big deal. It was after that black people got lynched.
After the emancipation.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Now every other day, every 2 days, a black man is killed.
Right. This is such an important thing that's happening in our society that, as you're saying, we're all starting to become more aware of, and we need to speak about and
60
act
million refugees in the world.
Pardon, right.
We have an amazing number, like 60 million people. And it's through, in Europe they're really feeling it, in Southeast Asia, just people suffering.
Of course. Everywhere. And what you're saying is, when we see the suffering, our hearts can start to wake up.
Yes.
Right.
We connect with our humanity.
Yes.
Shared humanity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really am hopeful after the great things that happened this week. The other Supreme Court decision about affirmative action in housing and Obamacare and I hate to be Cassandra. At the same time, I think we need to realize that there are a lot of people who really don't just believe in you and me, but you versus me, or us versus them, and who are really resistant to change, resistant to accepting or being open to change at all.
Yeah.
So I think the forces of resistance now, and we have to really try to be compassionate to work with those people and not demonize them.
Right. No, I agree. We don't want to demonize anybody, and compassion is a really important part of, first of all, being compassionate with ourselves, right? And then what does it mean to be compassionate with someone who's ignorant or prejudiced or racist or homophobic or whatever the is. And so that's why it's really important to remember there's different flavors of compassion that are needed at different times, and sometimes fierce compassion is what's needed to deal with bullshit. And it doesn't mean you want to harm a person, kill a person, hurt the person, but you don't want to put up with the bullshit. No is an important part of compassion. It's more compassionate because, like, not letting somebody act out their, again, this is just my bullshit, is compassionate, right? Rather than just letting people do whatever the hell they want.
It was interesting the morning of the Supreme Court decision. I read Yahoo News, and there's like one blurb after another, and it was, the joy of the Supreme Court decision, and then the next one was 25 tourists killed on a beach on vacation execution and 500 people slaughtered in Burma, and 30 people in a mosque, and I was going, whoa, it was like, it was part of me that was saying, wow, if I could have just take away the Supreme Court decision and let those 500 people live, if there was a choice, I might have gone through the 500 people. So it was weird to see the joy and the horror right there in an inch of print.
Sure. Yeah, totally appreciate that we're all dealing with reality. And this is one of the things that I think Buddhism is great about. Dukkha is part of reality, right? Like, I think you all know this, but we're all going to die. It's just part of the deal, right? And it's not a bad thing. It's not the wrong thing. It's not a mistake. Every living thing, born, lives for a while, and then fades, dies, changes. That's the nature of reality. And that's why what the Buddha pointed at is so radical, because he was not bound by the conventional reality in that sense, right? Because, the other term for awakening is the deathless, right? One sees that even the idea we were born may not be the fullest understanding of what happened and what's happening. It's all, in Buddhism they say dependent origination. It's all, each thing is dependent on other things, and that's how reality works, right? And it doesn't mean it's all over at the, when we die. Let's see what happens, because I've had enough near-death experience in my life. I don't know. I had a serious bike accident 4 years ago. That was serious, and that was a whole different kind of being unplugged, similar in some ways to what I've learned in Buddhism, but it was not my choice, but it was radical, and it's wild what happens. Even we assume we know what consciousness is. We may have more to learn about the whole thing, really.
There's a question back there.
Yeah.
Yes, I just, I think what was one of the most moving things for me this week was the way that the families of the people who were slain in Charleston it just, I was really blown away by that.
Yes.
I'm still shaking just saying it right now.
Yeah.
And just who can I be in the world, as I move to the world and have that kind of forgiveness.
Right? No, it's beautiful and amazing, and also, but even some of the people who were killed were jumping in front of other people, and they were jumping in front of kids, so the kids didn't get shot, right? I mean,
also on Friday night there was, I don't know if it's still being replayed, but on PBS there was a show on a gospel evening at the White House. And it was just one stunning number after another, ending with Aretha just burning the house down. It seemed like a rapturous ending for this very powerful week, but the possibility that black faith is going to save America is just sort of looming out there, that their awareness of grace is such a gift to this culture. I'm so grateful for Barack Obama. I'm shuddering my balls at what a planetary power he is, for good. Just, we don't deserve him, but I'm sure that we've got him.
well, I love what you say, except I think we do deserve him.
Well,
Because we all deserve
We haven't treated him very well.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
we're all growing up.
Yeah.
You know, that's the
Yeah.
other way we can think about it. The whole world is growing up, and it's slow, unfortunately, but it seems like there's some steady progress, slowly, unfortunately, but better than no progress at all.
Eugene, you talked about the power of the internet and how that has made us all super hyper connected. And, you know, I think that's linking it back to Allen Ginsberg and madness, because part of what, you know, Burgoyne's mother and people in mental hospitals, from what I can understand or what I know of some of that, is that there's so much input that comes into a brain that's not fully functioning. Everything comes at once, and I think that's happening to us as a culture. I mean, you know, all of these contradictory things. I mean, the grace of the black congregants in that church, then, and the impact of that, because that, I think, that kind of forestalled any negative reactions. There were no riots in following those deaths, and I think it was due to their grace. In you know, and there's the Pope saying, "Who am I to judge?" At the same time that all of these things are going on, and then there's all those people being killed even as we speak, and you know, the whole ISIS craziness, and you know, sometimes it can be paralyzing. What do you want?
It can't, right? It can be. So that's why it's important to practice, because we're not free yet totally. We're not, none of us, and again, the more practice, the more we can, the more understanding comes. And especially one of my favorite teachers these days is U Tejaniya, who talks a lot about, and actually the Buddha talked about it too, we practice in order to understand. And there's still more for us to look at. Even ISIS, keep looking at the causes and conditions. Where does ISIS come from? Why is ISIS here? Why is all the violence in the world happening, right? Somebody feels, you know, like they've been disrespected or hurt or denied or something, or they have a certain cultural tradition that they're bound to and they're living out of. Right, and so of course all the white people think black people are not so smart, because that cultural tradition. Slavery has been happening in this country for hundreds of years and has never been dealt with, right? It kind of got dealt with, fake dealt with, but in fact there was the formal slavery, and then there's been informal slavery ever since. Economic slavery, cultural slavery, meaning people have not been included in this society in a real way, and so there's still dukkha, and I don't know enough about ISIS, but also the Arab. If I look around the world at the Arab cultures, they have been denigrated in the world in general, at least from the Western point of view, right? Like the West is what's great. And Christianity really probably a high. In Judaism, well, that's okay. They can live a little bit, around the world. But the Arabs, well, they're the prejudice against Arabs, and not just Arabs, Muslims, because not all Muslims are Arabs, and so it's the same dukkha that we look at right here, right? Our own limited understanding, our own prejudices, our own ignorance that we want to keep freeing up so we can see how to respond to reality.
I just want to respond exactly. I was just thinking exactly that, and the mention about the people forgiving the killer of their loved ones. Yeah. I've carried around. How prejudice begets prejudice. I've carried around for me for a long time a strong prejudice against the Christian church, because I've seen most of the persecutors of gays coming from religious positions, i.e., in this culture, the Christian church, and I've carried around for me a long time. This country would be better off if just Christianity just became like secularized and marginalized and out of the picture. And when I saw those people forgiving the killers, I can see that there is a beauty to the religion too. It isn't just hatred and narrow-mindedness. There really is a beauty there. And that was an eye-opener for me.
Great. I love hearing that. That's beautiful. Because, of course, that's true what you're saying, right? Anything can be used in an ignorant way. And these things, all the religious traditions, there's some truth in the core somewhere, and people find them. Because, like, somebody mentioned, you mentioned, A.H. Almaas. So Almaas is Hamid Ali, is one of my teachers, is great. He's as awake as anybody I've met in this lifetime. And, Hamid is a Kuwaiti, right? He was a Muslim, or he is a Muslim. I don't even know. I don't think about it that way. But all I'm saying is, the beauty of reality is possible in each person. It's in all of us. So I'm a little aware of the time. So
yeah, well, I guess we're right at the end point over here. Unless there's any last minute questions or remarks, it's been a wonderful discussion. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Great to be here with you all. Really, it's great to share this weekend with you. Really.
So at this point, we go through some announcements. First of all, we have a social half hour, and we have a host, who's Mark over there. So
yes, so I brought a few treats. Help yourself. There's hot water. Help yourself to a cup of tea. Just wash out the cup when you're finished. Serve the hot water. And there's a sign-up sheet, I think, on Credenza if you want to get included on the main list, the email list. And many of us leave at 12:30 to head out for lunch. And so,
and let me not forget that to remind everybody about our Dana and the Dana Bowl. This is a Pali word for generosity, and the contributions help sustain this group and some of the good work that we do, like the Saturday Larkin Street feedings, the outreach to prisoners that one can send out the newsletters, and keeps us in this beautiful spot that we sit in. And let's not forget to welcome our newcomer. Forget your name already, but if you can mention it again. Okay. And if you don't mind hanging around for a little bit, we'd love to maybe have some of us talk with you informally. And if there's any other announcements? Oh, yes, and by the way,
I put some flyers out. I have a day-long at Spirit Rock, July 25th, next month. Discovering Reality, Awareness, Inquiry, and Waking Up, if you're interested.
Do you have a few extra ones?
Yeah, I put some out.
That'll be great.
Do you want to plug your group also? Because Sunday night.
Oh, sure. I'll plug my group. I never plug my group. I had San Francisco Insight is at the Unitarian Church, Franklin and Geary. It's we have 2 meetings, Sunday night and Wednesday night. I teach on Sunday nights. Pamela Weiss teaches on Wednesday nights, 7 to 9. We'll be there tonight. Similar, I'm going to do some version of this talk tonight there. And please join us as you wish. I'm generally there every Sunday. If not, we have a website, so that tells you everything about reality anyways.
Okay, and at this point we do our dedication of merits.
Yes.
By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow, and may all live in equanimity, without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.